You're going live now, soon. Yes, we are live. We are live. Welcome everyone to all my listeners who want to tune in again with these amazing, beautiful creations that we have created, a topic called Real Connections. Real Connections is all about real people talking real things, but also giving their real experiences and their life journey. So what a more beautiful day today is going to be, that we have got a beautiful guest called Ellie, who is absolutely a delight for us to bring her in this session to talk about her life journey. So what is Ellie is all about? She is a life coach. So, and we are talking about human life. So what a resonation for me to introduce her and bring her in this show. So Ellie is a life coach, a speaker herself, and has been primarily working with the teenagers for the past few years. So again, interacting with human is one of her forte, one of her strongest point, I believe. But most importantly, she has got confidence in communicating who we are with the world. You know, we humans communicate with world all around, and today I've got the pleasure to communicate with her and interact with her. What a beautiful soul that we have guest with us. But also I have got the amazing, as always, Beck, who is going to supporting me and helping me, but also going to be a great interactive session today that we are going to have. It's going to be very interesting because it's all about communication, but it's all about life journey experiences that we are uncovering from every human, but also real humans, real talks, and who are able to share their real experiences. So today, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Ellie, but I'll go first straight to my co-host, who is going to do a little bit of thing that she does all the time and makes this show a bit of a more interesting. So welcome back, and once again, you can do that thing.
Very excited to be here with you both today, and thank you, Ali, for joining us. Really excited to hear your journey and your life story today, and thank you for being here and sharing that. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's so exciting to be part of this.
Yes, absolutely. So Ellie, I'm going to jump straight into it and going to start. I don't know where to start because you are a life coach. You also chose to be like a connecting and communicating, but also working with teenagers in today's world is going to be a hell of a lot of experience that we are going to uncover, I think, because we always talk about generations gaps. We always talk about mindsets changing, all sorts of things, but here you are interacting with all these teenagers of today's world, which is digital world, I call it, or the different world than what we used to be. So I'm going to begin here with Ellie. Tell us something about that. First thing is, becoming a life coach is afterwards, but before that, I wanted to uncover from your life journeys, how did you get here where you are today? And what was your journey since your childhood? What did you thought in your mind, what to become, what not to become? And every human has got dreams when they are little, when they are child, then become changes in their teenage. Now you're talking with teenagers, you are communicating with teenagers. So let us uncover your life as a child, as a teenage, and then we'll get into that.
That's such a great question. I've thought about this recently because I'd say I'm like a classic zigzagger. Like I wouldn't say it's not necessarily jump from thing to thing, but it's not like a straight line going to where I thought I was going to go, which is often the case for lots of people, but it's become very clear. But one thing I have noticed since I was probably old enough to speak effectively, like and be understood, like proper sentences, I've always been into performing arts and drama and stage, and as soon as I could write, I was writing stories and scripts. I wrote and directed my first play in year 5 and 6 and got it performed in front of the school. No one else had done that. I wrote this play and went to my principal and said, can I get a cast together and direct this? And we put it on. And then we moved to New Zealand, and I continued with performing arts in musicals and barbershop singing. And English was always my strong point, like written essays and literature.
Sure.
So I've got a very creative background in that sense. And so I've always been, and then I did a film degree. So my tertiary education is in directing and writing for screen and theatre. Wow. And I've always been passionate about storytelling and understanding character motivation and rallying behind the main character in something. I remember being so obsessed with Doctor Who when I was younger that when they killed off my favorite character, I rewrote the ending and sent it to the directors because I was so upset. It's really funny. And I wrote them a letter. I rewrote like other episodes. I was like, this is how you can bring her back. And, I was so passionate about it and so determined to tell the story I wanted to see told. So that's always been a thing for me. And in university, in the third year of the degree, there's no written exams. You just make a short film. And the rules at the time were you're not allowed to direct your own script. You have to direct someone else's for the experience. But I was passionate about the story that I wanted to tell. And I was in the writing class. So I thought, why can't I just use my own script? This rule is ridiculous. I'm paying for the education. Surely I should have a choice. And that everyone tried to push me away from it and say, no, it's not allowed. Like, that's not the way we operate. And my one directing teacher said to me, if you really want to do it, state your case on a letter and I'll put it through to the right people. And I managed to change the rules for the degree so that I could tell my own story because it was unique to me. And I knew no one else would be able to tell it because it had a French speaking character in it. And it was unique to an experience I'd had. So I've always been a visionary person who, when I can see what I want to create and I can get behind the energetics of the story and the meaning behind the story, I have to tell it. I have to follow through. And as a kid, I was also a very so my childhood dream was to be a director, basically. And it still kind of is. I'd love to direct a feature film. I love that sort of stuff. As a kid, I was always labeled as a strong character, like a confident, loud, bossy. And at the time you just brush it off. But as an adult, having done a lot of inner work healing and inner child work and other things, I've noticed how that can actually become a limiting belief because then you start to be around other adults that operate differently and you start to feel too much or judged or like no one can understand you. And all of these things have started to come out as an adult and I've started to unpack them more. And when it comes to teenagers, that's the years where nothing is like makes sense. You just have to just wing it. You follow the crowd, you keep yourself safe, as in like you need a tribe, not necessarily safe choices, but you keep yourself in a tribe. And and I found lots of times when we first moved to New Zealand, like I was bullied in year 9 for almost a year and the teachers didn't really do much and there was stuff spreading on social media, the untrue rumors, and you don't have a voice. Like if it's you against 20 other people, you're kind of stuck. And I was like, when I came through that, ended up being in leadership roles as a mentor and like prefect and camp leader. And so I've always had experience leading others and helping others find their voice. And then when I finished college, this is the most condensed version I can give you. When I finished college at 18, I went traveling for a year because I'm from the UK originally. I went to France for 4 months of that, and I was a nanny or au pair for a host family for a 6-year-old boy that didn't speak English. And a few years ago, wrote a memoir about that, and the self-discovery side of it and the journey that I had. And from there, long story short, that connected me with lots of other young people across the world that didn't know how to navigate life, didn't know what they were doing. And a few people said to me, oh, you've got a natural way with young people, like why don't you you've got a story to tell, you can help other people tell the story. And it evolved into a life coaching business.
Wow.
Where I now use my creative skills and my other things that I love and enjoy and merge it into life coaching. Yeah.
There is a lot of creativity in this bubble, and as you're talking, there's so much color coming through, and you are able to, I guess, express your experiences through your writing and through your creative directing. The times that you were bullied and you weren't being heard, did you feel that you did more writing and, you know, you sort of like fell into your creative side more?
From memory, I don't think I did anything specific at the time, but I know that when it came to, like, I didn't deliberately go and then write something, but I do have memory of then having projects to do.
Yes.
Where I would have a really inspired thought. And I've found, like, I've still got, like, I actually found a bunch of them earlier because I was having a clear out, and I found a bunch of old stories that I'd written and like scripts and stuff. And it's like directly on like an experience I had, and I just changed the character names.
Yeah.
And I'd even like preface it, because in case an adult that I didn't want to see it picked it up, I wrote, "This isn't true, by the way," at the top. But obviously it is, you know, but
yes.
It's it's fascinating. Those things always come through, and that knowledge in itself, that's what I was doing, made it clear to me that if we don't have an outlet for our voice, it will come through and sabotage our relationships or our experiences somewhere else.
Yeah. Wow.
We don't channel it somewhere. Yeah.
Just the courage and the confidence you had as a 5-year-old is just blowing me away, to even, you know, approach your principal with your story and wanting to direct it. That is like, you don't hear that 5-year-olds, you know, having
year five and 6.
Oh, year 5, sorry.
Year 5. Yeah, I was like, yeah, but I was just as bolshy as a 5-year-old. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Still impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think that you were more at a very early age, you became like more extrovert or introvert? And what do you call yourself in that?
I'd say I'm an extrovert now, but I'm a calmer extrovert. I used to be quite a noisy extrovert, and now like the confidence came from being the one that was seen in the middle of the room. And now I do speak in public, and I can quite easily hold an audience. Yeah. But I don't feel like I need to make myself known when I walk in the room. It comes from an inner peace and an inner calm, which obviously as a teenager isn't easy to access if you don't have anyone to show you how to do it. And often the kids that I work with that are supposedly the loud, noisy, confident ones, when I get them on one-to-one, they're like, "Oh, actually, I just want to be soft and calm," but they haven't been shown how.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So the creativity side of it that came, was it because of your extrovert presentation, or is it something that you always wanted to be creative? Or the environment made you creative? What was your environment like when you were growing up?
I actually credit my parents a lot to my because we had a really good childhood in terms of exposure to things. Like I was encouraged to do drama, but also the main thing that I remember is, and I still have it all now, my dad mostly, but mum would if she was able to, recorded everything on one of those old 90s camcorders. Yeah. So all of our school shows, all our birthdays and Christmases, and some of it's all broken now, but we've still got some DVDs and things that we got created of all our childhood stuff. And we'd film it during the day, and then I would be the one out of the 3 siblings to come home and be like, "Can we watch it? Can we watch it?" And I would just watch and learn how to do it myself. And then that turned into me making my own slideshows and stuff when computers came out, you know, like back in the day. So I think I just developed a fascination with it, and I loved seeing myself on a screen, not from a want to be famous point of view, but just like, oh, that's possible. And yeah, that's definitely channeled through in a lot of things now in the creative process.
Now, I think that's a good all the listeners who are listening, because when you grow up and when you have got this kind of environment or whatever that makes you who you are today, in that regard, if I have to ask you this question, like, you know, everybody has got a dream as a child. Everybody has got like a something vision as a child. And then to pursue that vision or to create that dream true, you got to take some steps, which is quite like you have to be outgoing, you got to be extrovert, you got to touch people. And then for you, it was quite natural because you adopted the role of a nanny to work with kids, to work with teenagers. So obviously that became a very good strong point for you. But the step before that strong point, you took that step to go that extra mile and to accept that world, which is completely different at that age, probably, you know? So what really went through at that stage of your mind that, okay, you were going to be like that? I know you told me supported by parents, which is great. But then do you think that apart from support, you also need your own kind of vision and support that you have to go outside the box?
Yeah, I think as a teenager and a child, I don't recall specific things that shaped me in terms of like direct people, but I can recall some experiences that made me stronger. But at the time I wouldn't have known it. It was just, you just power through. But it's all hindsight stuff. And I can see now that, you know, there were times where I would be arguing, or there'll be some sort of problem in the playground between me and my friends, which happens with kids. And I would often be questioned separately to the group of friends. So they would all have each other to bounce off and like deny or make stuff up on the spot and support each other, or tell the truth, whatever it was. But often I wouldn't know what they'd said, and they could all kind of back each other up. And then I'd be questioned, have no idea what they'd said, and have to come up with my version and hope that it matched or something aligned. And often I was kind of isolated, and that happened a couple of times over the years because I was the confident one. And my friends would, the group that I kind of played in and out with through primary school, not all of them, but there was a few that would cry really easily and usually use that. And again, it's not a judgment to them. Like, I understand a lot more about child psychology and attachments and things now, but you know, at the time they would turn on the tears like that and be believed. And because I didn't cry, I believed it was a weakness, because I was told, like, you don't need to cry to get your way. Like, you don't, you know, just show up, say your truth. So those experiences were really shaping, and they've, as much as they, at the time, it was a survival mechanism, right? Like I didn't cry and I just said my piece and got through. And now it's actually unpacking that and seeing the damage it actually has done over a cumulative period. Unpacking that as well is showing me more about creativity and having access to people that can hear you or want to hear you as well.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I have a very delicate question here, which I did very much fascinated for all the listeners who are listening. Particularly, you said about bullying, and bullying is a very, very kind of a talked about topic at the moment. Wherever you go, whatever age you are in, whatever field you are in, there's a lots of bullying going on. So, for you to experience that, just listeners' point of view, what really made you what you are today and overcome those challenges? How did you make those into positives? How did you put yourself into a positive aspect?
At the time, I think it was year 9, so I was about 13 or 14, and I hadn't been in New Zealand for that long. I think it'd only been nearly like not even 2 years. And social media was just coming through, so it was Bebo and MySpace and those things where it was just all very fresh. But I just remember being so adamant, like so solid in what I had to say, even if I wasn't believed. I just kind of kept saying the same thing. I didn't try and change what my story was to try and fit their version of it, or to try and get off, or to try and ownership in what I'd done and or hadn't done, you know. And I also, I think, again, it was that survival mechanism of not showing the emotion that now looking back, I would do that now as a person. If someone had upset me, I would show how I felt. But at the time, I was very much like, that's not what happened. And you need to help me because, you know, and it was very direct. So yeah, I think that answered your question. I can't remember.
Yeah, no. Basically, yeah, I wanted to see how you made yourself into that positive mindset. You know, it becomes in that situation, anybody can go into any direction and become very sensitive, become very timid, or become very much like weaken themselves can be. And so for you to come along all that way, and still what you are doing where you are today is actually working with teenagers and actually coaching as well. So that was, I was curious about it. So I think you answered me. But for all the listeners, you can see that, you know, bullying is going to be always there, but then that should stop your growth, or that should stop your mind from changing to where you can always. That's all I wanted to ask you in that regard. So yeah, you can ask Beck if you want.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, we come across these situations that that sort of don't necessarily define us, but they change the trajectory of where we believe our path should go. And I think, as you said, you know, like most of us do zigzag through our lives.
Hmm.
We have this idea of where we would like to go, yet with different situations, they sort of change us on another path, and we learn how to grow and evolve and to apply those lessons to our life. So it's really amazing to see that throughout your experiences, you've then been able to tailor them to help others, not just for yourself, and to apply them to now a growing career and and a passion to not only help yourself through your self-discovery, but also the children that you're working with. It's really beautiful to see that, it's forever passing the knowledge on. I think that's really important in not just in our own growth, but in the others that we come into contact with, and even being an introvert or an extrovert, we're able to still help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So after that, moving into that, I wanted to ask you, like, how did you made your transition from so creativity is absolutely what you are, that we can see. So liking for films, liking for creating all sorts of things, and being into media or being into the public or being into the limelight. How difficult is it for you, for all the listeners who are in that particular zone? Like, okay, I don't want to be in this, or I know I can, but I don't want to be. If that kind of situation is there for listeners, what would you say in terms of your creativity? Because creativity is something that you have to present. And to present, you have to be with the people. You have to be in the thing. Otherwise, you can't just call creativity for yourself and not present it, right? So in that regard, how have you changed or how have you trained your mind to become such on that level? That
In terms of presenting?
Yeah, in terms of presenting yourself into this.
I think in terms of, I think I've always been like, there's videos of me in primary school at the nativity play, and I was the angel Gabriel at age 4, and my only line was "Don't be afraid," and I shouted the line like "Don't be afraid," like I was really loud. So like it was just I've never had any problem with like saying my piece. I always went for the lead role in the shows, and like it's always been a thing. But in terms of encouraging other people, that I think what you said about like creativity isn't just for yourself. I believe it is. I think all of us are innately creative, regardless of whether other people see it or not. Like I genuinely believe that, and think everyone is naturally creative, even if they think that they're not, because it doesn't necessarily have to be a magical piece of artwork. It could just be a line on a page. Like everyone's unique. And I think for me, encouragement for people that want to present more and might not be feeling like they're good enough. I usually come back to the question whenever I face that self-doubt and ask, okay, well, what do I actually want to achieve from this? Is it because I want validation, or is it because I just love what I'm doing and I just like want to see if anyone resonates? Like, it's like, what's your intention? If it's just to put it out there, great, that's a great intention. If you are on a mission to like make megabucks with painting or speaking or something, like it's good to keep like have the dream, but keep your expectations in check, so you're not like setting yourself up for major heartbreak straight off the bat. I think get clear on what you want first and what you'd hope to happen, and if you're okay, like think about, I try not to think about the worst case scenario, but think about what's the worst case scenario. Am I okay with that? Cool. If not, maybe now's not the right time. It's more about like framing the experience before it happens.
So tell me something in the creative world, when it comes to creativity versus expectations. When creative people are there, they always have their own expectations, and then they expect people to expect something out of them. Give us something about that. Like, I want to understand from your point of view, being in that space of creativity, being in that acting space, you have got your own expectations, but then you also have people's expectations. How would you describe that for listeners, who want to get into this field or who are getting into this? There is nothing like to be afraid of. There is nothing to be too expected of it, because doing your own thing with your creativity is always important. How did you train that?
I think it really depends on the scenario, because an actor taking on the role of someone else and doing it justice is different to someone just like me now speaking my story.
Absolutely.
So it really depends on the scenario, but I think across the board,
Mm.
One thing I've really noticed, and I do this in my talks and stuff,
Mhm.
because like for example, like on Wednesday just gone, I did a parenting event, and I've
Yes.
only done it once before, and it was last year
Yeah.
as well. But originally, like a couple of years ago, I had this story in my head: what parent is going to pay to hear me speak about teenagers when I don't have teenagers? It was
Yeah.
I was like, no one's going to give me their kids because I don't have any. I'm not qualified in mental health. Why would they send them my way? It's a load of crap. Like I've had loads of people would like cross my path, and I'm usually like the last resort. Like they've tried counseling, they've tried therapy, blah blah blah. And when it comes to creativity and speaking, because I'm so confident now, I wasn't at the beginning, but now I'm so solid in what I've seen and what I've observed, and I've done a lot of my own inner healing work, and a lot of I've been coached as well by various different people, and had lots of different like life experiences in the past 2 years. And now I'm like, if I show up on a stage and people have chosen to come and watch, whether they've paid or they're there for free, they're choosing to be in my space. So they can have their expectation, but them having their expectation of me is just as bad as me having my expectation of them. So if we all just drop the expectation, no one gets disappointed. If you go, it's like changing the word expectation and changing it to intention. Like instead of I expect it to be a good show, it's like I intend to go and have a good time. Then your experience will be different, because if it's a really crummy show and the actors are terrible and forget all the lines, well, your intention was to go and have a joyful experience. So you can just laugh it off, go and get another drink, go somewhere afterwards and make a night of it. And if you're the actor that forgot all your lines, if your intention is I'm just going to show up and do my best, that's that. It takes away that I have to be this, I have to match that criteria and make sure everyone else is happy, because that expectations borderlines of people pleasing. And that's when you're never going to feel the inner happiness.
Such a good framework to have around it, to have with any creative aspect in your life, to just release that expectation of how things are going to turn out. It's the first time I've ever said that out loud, but it just came flowing through. It's great. Just channel what needs to come.
Absolutely. Extending on that, I just wanted to ask you this as well, like discovering yourself that you can do this, you can do that, and becoming creative, or you can act and you can write and you can speak and you can all sorts of things. When you discover that, what was your first feeling on that? And then how did you accept yourself that, yes, I can do this and I will try and I will keep doing? What really went with the flow to discover and then to accept it, and then to grow confidence within yourself to completely pursue that as your career path or as a pathway, whatever?
I think it's not like a one size fits all model for me. I believe like again, it came down to, for me, having people that were nurturing the talent as well. They were encouraging it. And that is invaluable. Like it's going to be a lot harder for a child who's naturally good at singing to pursue anything creative if their parents either can't afford it, or think they're just terrible, or have got other priorities, or the school doesn't focus on arts. Like it is very much an environmental thing for a young child, at least, to be able to, unless they've got access to something at home or a space at home where they can just hide away and do it. It does take a bit of a village at the beginning, at least I found. And then you do meet, when I got to college, we'd have the school shows every year. And even though we auditioned, we knew who were going to get the lead roles, because it gets to a point where the teachers have favorites, and there are some that are quite a bit extra talented in some forms, but other ways not. But you just knew who was going to get the lead roles. So again, it's a management of expectation. And I think I personally had a bit of kind of blind faith and a little bit of like over excessive optimism that I would be able to outperform like the top drama people at school. Like it was a bit of a dream. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to go for it, because just in case. And everyone else was like, what's the point? Like, that you're not going to get it. So I guess sometimes it's like, for me, again, it's all just my experience, but it's like, if you've got that burning desire, and you say you went through the whole of primary school and didn't have any access to much, and then you get to college, which is usually where there's a bit more access to co-curricular and like development stuff, that's where I think you've just got to throw yourself in.
Mm.
And don't, even though teenagers are rife at putting each other down and trying to throw you off and be like, what's the point? And you know who's going to get it. Like all that talk will come in, but that's when you just got to push harder. That's where the resilience comes through. Like, even if you know, and you do know in those cases that you're not going to get it, just going for it anyway is an experience that you can't really replace, because even if you feel the disappointment, you can at least be like, well, I tried, you know, I know what it's like to try and fail, like take the lesson anyway, still have that vision, still participate, still get the buzz from it. Yeah, and then just roll with it, like, and don't beat yourself up as well, like nothing's personal, I find.
Yeah. So what's your current kind of experience with real when it comes to you look at yourself as a teenager when you were, and now you're working with teenagers? What difference, what challenges are you facing currently, and how do you do those kind of easily, or what sort of challenges are you facing really?
Like facing as in working with teenagers?
Working with teenagers.
Well, when I was a teenager, as I said, social media was only just coming through, and I didn't have we didn't have smartphones, so it was all on a computer, so you had to actually log on to something to get onto Facebook. And it wasn't as it was now, so Messenger wasn't a thing. Like, there was lots of different things on social media. Now most of the problems that many of the teenagers face that I work with use the terms like, my friend left me unread, or left me unseen. I was like, what does that even mean? Like, and I actually, it took me like a year to realize what they were saying. I was like, because I know what that is, but I didn't know there was a term for it. And I'm like, God, I sound like a dinosaur now, and I'm only 28. Like, it's like there's so many terms. I've got like friends, teenagers. I'm like, can you just tell me what the lingo is now, so I don't like fall behind? But yeah, like there's things like that actually cause major anxiety. Like if their friends are typing a message and you can see the 3 dots, and then they stop typing and then just don't send it, they're like, oh, and they go into this massive spin of like, I've upset them, or they're angry at me, or, you know, and then they go into overthinking, what should I have said? And it's just, it's a bloody nightmare sometimes, to put it like blankly. So that's a big one that I didn't face. Another one I find, when I was a teenager, I was like the host. So I was often like, my family's always had an open door policy with our friends, you know, like we'd always be the place where all our friends came to. We'd often like attract some friends that, you know, they didn't have the greatest home life, and they'd come through and be there because they felt safe and comfortable. And it was always a good time, and like parties and things like that, it was like safe to do that at our place. But I find now, because of various factors, again, I left school 10 years ago, but a lot's changed in 10 years with access to jobs and technology, and parents are a lot busier. I find like there's a lot more going on, that they don't really get to supervise as much, and the parents are quite a bit more absent in general, and the scrolling is there, so they're not really paying attention. And teenagers in general feel very disconnected from their parents. So they're playing, seemingly acting out more, but actually what they're doing is like, just see me, like they'll do anything, you know, to get their parents to look up from their phones. And it's funny because often the parents are the ones saying, my child's addicted to their phone, but I've seen them just as much in the scrolling as their kids. So it's a hard pill to swallow for many of them, which is why I like talking to parents, because I get really real with them.
So it must be very hard in today's world to motivate the teenagers or communicate with them in their own style or in their own way of understanding. Did you find any difference in what you used to be communicated when you were a teenager and now when you are communicating? Is there a big difference in the communication?
I think when I was at school, and the parents of the friends I had, they were quite, well, mine were kind of alternative, to be fair, in the big scheme of everyone's parents, but it was a bit more traditional back then. It was a bit more like, you know, the parent's the parent and the teenager's the teenager. And now I'm starting to encourage, and this is something I learned off of one of my friends, and he owns a youth charity, but he kind of put this concept in my brain, and I've had it there, but I didn't have a term for it again. It's like mentor-based parenting, where the parent, when they get kid gets to the teenage years, the child doesn't actually want a parent figure. They need a mentor figure, and the parent can be that and still be a safe boundary between them. Still can be a little bit of a hierarchy if you need it, but overall, teenagers need to know that they're not less than. They're not being judged or like made to feel like they're a child, because they're trying to grow up and understand themselves. But if they're still given the babyish kind of language or expectations of like younger ones, you're actually stunting them quite a lot. And in terms of my communication style, like when I first started, I was quite different to now, obviously, but depending on the child, like some of them are a bit more reserved and like softer spoken, so I'll match that energy. But the ones that are like blah, 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 and they swear, I let them swear, even if they're younger. I'm like, just be you, just get it out your system, because I'm not going to tell you off. Like I'm here to see and feel all of you, regardless of, nothing offends me. I don't take it personally. I'm not their parent. I don't have to punish them. They don't have any other outlet. I might just go for it, and often they don't need to, but that option is there. I'm not going to shut them down. But, there's been the odd occasion, and I'll quite openly own this. Like if I have a teenager that's sometimes swearing or like joking or being sarcastic, I'll do it back. And it's not at me. It's just their communication style. But I match that because it gives them a sense of, oh, okay, she's on my level. Like she gets me. And it's not me trying hard. It's just an energetic exchange of like, sweet, I can open up and be a little bit brash myself. And they're going to hear that because that's where their energy's at. And it works every time. Yeah.
Excellent. So the challenges that you are facing currently in terms of communication, you pretty much, there is a mindset in the current world. So as you said rightly, teenagers don't want to be parents, they want to be mentors. So they are more like in that development path where they consider how I can develop, how I can enhance my knowledge, but not by parenting style, but like a mentoring style. So drawing that line, did you had challenges around that area? And did you have challenges like, okay, as you said before, the parents were saying, okay, you don't have kids, how do you know how to cope or how to communicate?
I've never had, actually probably once in about 2.5 years, if I had a parent say, how do you know all this without having children?
Okay, excellent.
I also had the story in my head about like, no one's going to pay to see me and people might want to know my qualifications. I've had one person ask me my qualifications, and that wasn't to decide if they worked with me or not. It was midway through working with their child, and they're like, oh, so where did you study? It was just casual, just assuming I had. And I have done mentorship programs and certifications and things, but not like, I don't claim to be a therapist or a counselor or a psychologist, so I don't promote myself as one. And I haven't studied mental health in the traditional way, but I've done a lot of, things myself and courses myself and deep work, and worked with different coaches that have shown me my limiting beliefs, and a lot of inner child stuff, like all of it has come out to play. And I'm quite confident telling people that now. If they say, well, what do you know? I'm like, actually, it's like, if you don't resonate with the way I work, that's cool. I'm not going to try and convince you. Like,
Yeah, I guess a lot of people have their own discovery processes. And when you can match the other person's experiences, they feel comfortable to open up and to share and to engage in their experiences. And not that you take from their experiences to create your own, but I think I could imagine that it would form a safe space for them to let you in more, and then from your experiences you're able to guide them to help themselves, because at the end of the day they don't want somebody to tell them what to do. It's just to have somebody resonate and to acknowledge that their experiences in them as an individual is validated.
Absolutely. That's the primary focus. I'm just going to pause for 2 seconds. I need to get my laptop charger. It's just there. I just realized I didn't plug it in. I knew I'd forgotten one thing.
Don't worry, I had to do the same. I'm not sure if you heard, mine dropped.
Yeah, we're good now.
We are all real.
It's on 20%. It's like, I need to charge that. There we go.
Yes.
No, that's cool. So tell me something about this program that you are running, and how did you get there? What was your experiences that you can share? That what did you think it was a need for this program or this event that you recently done called Evolve? Basically. So all listeners can understand and see where you are coming from and why it is a need in the current stage of our environment or our lifestyle that we need this.
Yeah.
Tell me something about evolve, because I think we are all evolving here with your insights.
Yeah, no, that event has been, so we've done it twice now, and it's, if I'm completely, just to give you a context around how I think of things and where they come from.
Yes, please.
I'm very much an intuitive person when it comes to making stuff. I'm not a traditional business mind. I actually worked with a business coach recently and learned a lot of like tools and tricks that I know I'll implement at some stage, but I've realized how much my brain is very much like, I just need to flow with what comes in the moment. And
you're a creative person.
Yeah, like I love like when I'm in a good solid flow and I'm clear with the idea, I can plan. But if I'm not, I'm very much like, something will come to me. And evolve was kind of a bit of a shower thought. I don't know if you've had those when you're just like, oh,
yeah.
And, I didn't have the name. I just knew I wanted to speak, and I wanted to speak to parents because I'd had a few experiences with a couple of teenagers last year and the year before, but there was a couple in mind that came to me that were very much like desperate, clinging to the, like needing their parent to understand them, and they just, parent was just like, here's my child, fix them. And as much as I will do that, and even if, you know, often it's hard to not give the parent insights as well, and I do my best to update them and share what's happening, and with consent obviously, but I was getting to a point where I was like, right, there's a couple of parents here that are just really not wanting to do the work because it's too confronting. And I get it, there's barriers, you can't force people, and they might not genuinely think they're doing anything wrong. So it's hard. And I don't want to approach them and be like, your child said you're doing this, and I think we need to have a talk. Like, that was never my style. So I thought, how can I reach people in a way that's less confronting, more uplifting, non-judgmental? Because I don't judge them. They're doing the best they can with where they are. But I was like, I need to meet them somewhere and help them see that there are other ways of doing things. And I love speaking and I love doing events. And I thought, and then Evolve came to me, and I reached out to one friend and she said, yes, I'm in. And then I was like, great, we just need one or two more, and then we've got an event, you know, we've got a night. And we reached out and they were totally in as well, and it just grew from there, and it's going to keep growing. Like, we've got bigger visions for it in terms of what we want to do and how we want to take it forward, and how we can include more people and everything eventually. And we were absolutely mind blown the first time we did it. There were parents in tears. There were parents like in front of other parents. It wasn't afterwards separately with us. They were like in the room, like crying, because they were like, wow. They were coming up to us saying things like, oh my goodness, I know exactly what I need to do, and it's going to start tomorrow. Like, it was just instant change, and people were just like so hyper aware, and we got so much great feedback. And then on Wednesday we did it again, and one lady came up to me on the break and said, I came last time and I just had to come back. Like, I just had to come back. I knew that there was more. And one of the other speakers said she got a message from a friend of hers that came, and she said, I went home and I woke my husband up and told him everything because I didn't want to forget, you know. And it's that feedback for us. It's like, even if it was one person, we're like, it's not rocket science. Like, the way we deliver, because we're not just standing lecturing at them with like, these are some parenting tools and try this and nothing wrong with it. That's just not what we do. It's experiential, and it's guided, and it's interactive, and there's a bit of playfulness and challenge in there too. It wakes them up. It's like a shake up. It's like a mini little earthquake in the room. Like, oh, okay, like I can see it now. I can see all my challenges. I can see where I'm falling short. And yeah, it's kind of got a fire in my belly. I'm like, we're onto something here. Yeah, and it unites people as well, because they're all in the same room and they're like, there's other people in here that aren't sure and want to know new ways of doing things.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that I guess, you know, like everything, as you were saying, like starts from before the child. You know, so when parents get caught up in life, you know, they sort of start to disconnect from their children, and, you know, from what the children are trying to tell them and show them through their behavior. And I think, you know, as you're right, parents they're doing the best that they can in their situation, in the circumstances. And, you know, life is not easy for, you know, for us. It doesn't matter where you are. And, you know, like with what's going on, I'm sure there's challenges in everybody's lives.
Yeah.
And I think it's really, it's such a nice, safe environment that you're creating, that people are able to share and to feel united, that, you know, they may not be the only one struggling, and that there are parents, you know, from different grades that they may not know that they'll have similar situations. And I think, you know, kids are so much more alike than we sort of make them out to be. You know, we're all individual, but as children, we all have the same needs. Yeah. And, you know, if we just went back to the basics and reminded our parents and ourselves of what the needs are, then it's not as confronting or as scary and, you know, sort of like offending, you know, to acknowledge that, you know, we just need to go back to their needs, their basic needs. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you say that, because, not to give too much away, but like literally one of the tools that was shared in one of the talks was take a breath before you respond. And we actually well, I didn't, but it was shown to them how to pause and actually physically understand what a pause can do. And all of them, you could see the energy lift, you could see the instant shift in their body and their visuals of what they were seeing, like themselves being able to do. And that is so powerful. And it, like you said, it's so simple, it's the basics, like, but no one tells you that. Like, no one tells you that when you have a baby, you're going to need to breathe a lot. You know, like you think it's just breathing through the labor, but it's actually like you have to breathe a lot more than that, like to be able to survive this and come out like remotely unscathed. But yeah, just that gentle encouragement and being like, you're doing good, but here's a way to improve.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you know, I think we can always evolve. Perfect. You know, I love it that, you know, we can always evolve, and it's not evolving on our own, you know, and like, as you know, because it is a partnership, you know, a family is a partnership, and without working together, well, it does make things harder to be able to evolve and to watch your children grow and flourish, you know, flourish to the adult and the people that you want them to be. So I think it's great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, true. But also one thing I've noticed, like, you know, in my world that I see it, so you don't have to be, as I always say, like, you don't have to become a parent or a label to act as a parent, which is a wrong idea, because I personally feel that, you know, your life experiences with your own parents also is like a parenting, and you learn from there. It doesn't have to be yourself a parent, you know. And the other thing I noticed was, and I wanted to touch this on it since you brought up this, is like, you know, when take a breath. So this is very important. So people are in a hurry or in a rush to finish the task and they complete the task all the time, whether it is kids related, whether it is their own related, right? They never breathe or they never take a pause. They think that I want to finish this off, right? And that's a big kind of a mind shift, that why do we have to take a breath? You know, I will miss out or I will not finish. That kind of cloud is there in the mind. How would you suggest on that kind of thing in your training, that in your coaching that you do, basically? You know, saying someone take a breath, some might say, or I might say, I never take breath. I don't want to take a breath. Why do I have to take a breath? But then how do you make them motivate positively?
I find it's interesting you use the word motivate. I think when I first started coaching a couple of years ago, I was very much, it'd be great to be able to motivate them. And now I'm like, actually, it's not about motivation. Motivation is a word that is great, but it's also comes from a place of force. It's like I have to judge myself up to do it. Whereas if we use the word inspire or lead, it's kind of like an enticement, but it comes from a deeper spiritual place. It's like that. I can show them. I like to actually take young people into the breathing thing as part of the coaching and be like, hey, what's the worst case scenario if you take 2 seconds to breathe out of like a 10-minute conversation? 2 seconds is no difference, but it's a massive difference in terms of the trajectory of the conversation. So, and it's not like I can tell you till the cows come home, just take a breath, it will change everything. But if you don't know and have never done it by yourself, sometimes, like I did this with a client the other week, and she's quite young as well, and I got her to take 1 deep breath, and instantly, you could see her relaxing. But then as she did it more, it started to bring up emotion, and that becomes too scary because you're going into your body and feeling. And that's where people back off, because they're like, well, if I feel, then I'm letting a lid off the can of worms, and then it will be out of control and But I'm like, yeah, but what's the alternative? I'm not saying go full into the depths of everything, but the alternative is always continue to suppress it, shut it down, get to 60 and have all these health conditions and have all this unresolved trauma and anxiety and resentment because you weren't ever allowed to express yourself. So taking 2 seconds when you're having tough conversations, or just between every conversation, just practicing it, allows you to access the feeling a bit more and make it less scary over time. And it's baby steps. You're not always going to get it right. That's one thing I've learned. But if in terms of motivating, I don't motivate, I'm more lead and kind of show. It's more like a show and tell kind of thing. I'll be like, this is how you do it. And then I'll actually sit there and do it in front of them. And often teenagers are like, this is a bit weird. But then I'm like, do it with me. And I'll look them in the eye and I'll engage them. It's the classic, like, if they can see you doing it, and as they'd say, make a dick of yourself, like do the thing. No one else is watching, it's just like, go into your bedroom and be like, and feel the difference. Like, that's it. There's no motivation needed, because when they feel it, then they'll do it.
Yeah, I really love how you phrase that. We don't motivate, you inspire, which is absolutely beautiful. And like that, I don't know, that those, how you phrased it just hit me. I was like, because motivation can be so strained, as you say, like it's there's an expectation to motivate yourself and to have results, but when you're inspired, it's a will that you just continue to do without any force. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us something about what's all the listeners who are listening currently, whether they are parents, whether they are teenagers, whoever they are at the moment, what's one of the rules or one of the positive aspect that you could share with your experiences, that you can say that, okay, this is something that very simple, please do it, can do it, easy to do it, not so hard. Because this is where people get confused when they go to a coach. They said, oh, I don't know what professionally she's telling, I just don't get it.
Yeah.
Simple words and simple terms. What would you say, if I have to say?
Generic piece of advice.
Yeah, like very generic, simple things.
Something simple.
Just like you said, you go to your bedroom, go to your bedroom and have a sleep. That's beautiful. I mean, that's something.
Funny. Yeah, it is. It's like, whenever I actually shared, this is kind of a spoiler into the Evolve talk that I did the other night, but I kind of came up with an acronym that's not actually a word, but it covered things like, when you're about to have a hard conversation or anything remotely challenging, ask yourself, how's my body language? How's my energy? I can, crash course this and write it down somewhere for you if you want. But there's body language, energy, timing. Is the timing right? What's the next one? Intention. Have you set the right intention? And the intention should always be, no matter what it is to connect.
Yeah.
I intend to connect with them through this, regardless of if it's putting their clothes away or talking to them about a holiday. The conversation can shift from, can you put your clothes away, please, to, those clothes have been there for a while. Is there something that you're like getting distracted with, or like, how are you feeling? That's total same conversation, different energy. And C is capacity. Do you actually have the space to have the conversation you think you want to have? Like, if you're going to ask them what happened today, but you actually only have 5 minutes and you're not prepared for a curveball, like you're setting yourself up for a big fall. And then the last one is eyes and ears. Like, can you stay present with them and listen rather than speak and interject?
Yeah.
So that was kind of a crash thing, but it's basically just check in with yourself before you do anything.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. I guess, you're right. You need the capacity to be able to hold them, whatever, the children need to say or don't say, because, you may possibly be wanting them to share more, but if you don't have the capacity for them to not want to share, well, then it's going to affect you. Yeah.
This is another thing as well. I was having a conversation earlier, and parents often, and it's so easy to do, and we all do it occasionally, but parents with younger kids often think, they say, the kids are winding me up, the kids are driving me nuts, the kids are pushing my buttons. I'm like, you don't have buttons, and the kids don't know where they are or to how to push them. What they're doing is triggering something in you that you need to heal. Because you know, and they're actually making you look inwards and be like, how can I connect with them more? How can I get more present? How can I understand their need? Because there's no such thing as buttons. Like we don't have any, you know, like that's not a thing. And if we take things personally, whether it's colleagues, kids, or friends, like if we take everything personally, like the kids are trying to wind me up, like, no, they're not. There's an unmet need that's gone on for a while. They know that this is the only way they can get your attention. Yeah. And it's going to keep going until that's resolved. Just like reframe it. Like if you can see them as someone, it's just searching for something rather than trying to make something happen. Yeah, the whole situation is completely different.
Absolutely. This is amazing insights. We are getting something out of it. And I think for all the listeners who are listening, I want to go, we are almost going to be finishing soon, but I wanted to still uncover some of the things which comes to my mind is, you know, in the current world, in the mindset of we had COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID, all sorts of things going on, now floods and this and that. How important and how communication is important when it comes to parents and kids, and particularly teenagers, that we want to, because they are the future generations, right? And they need the right advice or the right knowledge and everything that we could possibly give in this current situation. What would you say to the listeners who are listening, particularly to the parents who are listening, in your world, in your way, simple terms, that how to communicate or how to keep in check all the time with your kids doing the right thing or the teenagers doing the right thing in terms of the world? Do you let them control, or do you dictate, or do you give them like a freedom to interact and to communicate and take more of that approach? What sort of approach?
I think it really depends on the level of needs that the kids have and their attachment style to you and their closeness to you. But I think I shared this on a podcast the other week. I don't call it, I mean, I call it the curiosity approach, but I probably didn't the first one to come up with that. But it's remain curious all the time, like frame things from a point of view of, even if, like, you know, if you suspect they're going off and smoking weed with dodgy people every night, typically you'd go into fear and you'd be like, oh my God, they're going to end up on the streets, they're going to be taken astray and their schoolwork's going to suffer, and you crises in your head, you know, it's like terrible. But teenagers experiment. I'm not condoning it, but I'm saying teenagers will experiment, and sometimes if they're not getting a need met with another friend or you, or something bad has happened that they don't want to talk about yet, it might be a soothing behavior. It might be something they're doing, you know, that we're not naturally wired to go and do something dangerous to try and cause stress for someone. That's like, we're not wired that way. And I don't want to go into all the brain mechanics because I'm not an expert, but it's like, I think if you remain curious, you know, if they're doing something quite extreme or you suspect they are, instead of going in with I'm going to take your phone away and you're not allowed to hang out with these people, instead be like, I've got a bit of a feeling that you might be up to something. I might be wrong. I just want to get to know, like, if that's true, and if you're okay, like, is there anything you want to talk about, and just leave the door open. Because the moment you start judging or blaming, they're going to put you in the same box as any other person that's ever done that to them. And that could be a horrible teacher from back in the day. It could be a friend that they fell out with, and they're just going to put you in the same category. If my parents had judged me, and they'll treat you the same way as they've treated other people that have never apologized for judging them. So if you remain curious and acknowledge your own emotions first, again, it's set that conversation up beforehand. Be like, okay, how am I feeling? Am I ready for this? Am I calm? Am I curious? Am I open? If not, go for a walk 20 times around the block and have like a cup of tea and then do it. But it's curiosity. So does that work? Just out of curiosity? I mean, I'm not a parent, but I've spoken to people that it has worked for. And it might, and it's not, and also take away the expectation that it has to be a quick fix. Because for kids that are used to you being like all the time, if you suddenly switch and be like, what are you up to? They're going to be like, who are you and what are you doing? You know, so build it up slowly, start to slowly shift, but be consistent, because then they'll learn that you're not mucking around, you're not trying to take piss or anything, you know, you're building something new with them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, so all the listeners, as you can see, we have here a lot of things. We want to know a lot of things. I want to know a lot of things, but unfortunately, we are running out of time.
Mhm.
And I want to just say some few things here for all the listeners that, you can always contact Ellie with all your information that you need or feedbacks that you want to have more answers on it. As she always said that she's not a scientific expert, she's definitely a practical experience that she has been doing and she has been coaching. But herself being a creative, I feel that it's a very interesting journey that she has. So to sum it up, I wanted to ask her that how do you play all these roles in one life, Ellie? And how do you feel that others who are listening, for them to send a message that, okay, if I can do it, you can do it, but I have got so many things that I do, and it's nothing wrong in it. Like you don't want to be labeled with one thing or the other.
Mhm.
So how would you say to that, all the listeners, that what you're doing currently, so many things, so many inspiring, leading, projects and stuff?
I think if you'd have asked me that question a year ago, I'd have probably been quite strategic and said, plan out what matters to you and think about your values, and which is
Yeah.
all important, and decide what you want to do and what your priorities are. Now, I'd say wake up in the morning and decide how you feel and who you want to
Wow.
resonate, like who you want to reach, because
Mm,
it's there's room for logic, there's room for strategy for sure,
mm,
but the reaching people from my experiences come from when I'm speaking from my heart, which is why I didn't want to plan any of this or have any pre
absolutely.
questions, because I'm like, I can't come up with that
Mm,
as in the moment, and
mm.
this conversation would never be the same again,
Yeah.
so it's like that's where people resonate from my experiences. So if you're like doing 20 things and thinking, oh my god, I'm wasting my life, be like, actually, if your values are the same across all of them, no, you're not, you're living in purpose. Like,
Mm.
if it's consistent across the board, then it's fine, whether you're surfing or walking or talking to someone. If you're doing it because you love to do it, then great.
I resonate with that very much because when you wake up, there's always a new sun every day. So new ideas and so new things to do. So there
Not
is
in Auckland though, it's just rain at the moment.
at the moment there is rain. Yeah.
What is this?
Oh, don't worry, it's raining where I am as well. Like it's very
But
gloomy.
there is a good way of saying, you don't need to know where the rain came from or how the rain comes, but you can definitely do what is in your hand, is dance in the rain.
Yes, I'm tempted to go do that now.
Yes. So no, I definitely resonate with that concept of yours. Like, for all the listeners, you don't have to be bogged down. There is no such thing as you can complete these or that, and you have to start this and this end. It's nothing of that sort. It's all about what you feel every single day to do, and that inspires you. So I won't use the word motivate now. I'm taking out the word motivate from this book. So I can definitely resonate that. And to all the listeners, this is something that you can take away from me, is like wake up every day and breathe. Also, like take a pause for your breath, because it's your breathe that you are breathing. Nobody can stop it and nobody can do anything about it. So you have got the choice and you have got the opportunity to do yourself everything that matters to you. And so with that, I would like to go back to Beck and close this off and finish it off with this beautiful speaker, and then we'll go to Ellie.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of little gold nuggets here today, Ellie. Thank you for sharing with us. My biggest takeaway was as well to start the day and actually feel into your body where you're at in the moment, and really take that breath before you approach any situation, and really just lead from a place from the heart, with intention, with anything that we do, any conversation that we're having, any let the expectations go and just lead from a place of positive, heartfelt intention. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so final message, Ellie, from you to all our listeners. What would you say?
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
That's
Life is simple.
Overthinker. Keep it simple.
Yeah. Keep it simple. I love that.
I love it too. Actually, to all the listeners, keep it simple. Don't get complicated yourself or make complicated for others. because it's all about you and it's all about making simple for you. So with that end, I appreciate absolutely Kelly, Ellie, for coming on this beautiful insights, sharing with us.
Thank you for having me.
And yeah, we would definitely look forward to dwell into more topics where we can interact and how the modern world of engagement with the parents and kids, because this is all we are talking about, humans, real talk. So it's very important. If we don't talk, then who is going to talk? So let's talk it out. And with that end, I end this show. And once again, thank you so much, Ellie, for this beautiful, beautiful conversation that we had today. And as always, thanks very much, Beck.
Thank you.
We will come back once again. And
Thank
please
you.
do write. Please do write. We will share all our information. And Ellie, as always, as she said, she's a coach, but she definitely is there to help. And I think I'm fascinated with that concept of, like, a human helping a human, no matter what field you are in, basically.
So
That's the key message. So keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
Love it.
Thanks, Kat.